Welcome to Stellar Astronomy. I'm Dave Carey, your instructor for the lab part of the class, and in this video I'd like to introduce you to how the labs work. Doing science labs at home can be tricky, so we've had to make a lot of changes to the way we do labs in the astronomy program so that you can do them at home without having to come to campus or use a bunch of fancy equipment. First thing to remember is that the labs start in week 1. Make sure you start right away on that first lab. One of the most important things you'll notice about the labs in this class is that you have choices on what you'll be doing. Starting in week 3 of the semester, you won't just be given a lab to do. Instead, you'll see a list of several labs, and you get to pick which one you want to do. There are many different types of labs you can do. Some of them involve working on the computer with simulations of the sky or analyzing astronomical data. Others are hands-on physics experiments where you get to test how things work in the real world. Still others involve making your own observations of objects in the sky. This way, you can put together a set of labs that best fit your own interests, schedule, and access to equipment like printers and smartphones. As the weeks go on, you'll see more choices for labs, but you'll also have the option of going back and doing one of the labs you didn't do in a previous week. In effect, you'll have an ever larger collection of labs to choose from as the semester goes on. Each week, I'll introduce the labs online so you can see what options you've got. There's another way that I'll be giving you choices in your labs, and that has to do in part with the philosophy that I'm using in putting together the labs for this course. This is a GE science class, which means that most of the folks taking this class are not STEM majors. Instead, the odds are that if you're in this class, it's because you're majoring in a different field, but you need the science credit for your degree or transfer. For science majors, undergraduate science labs do two things. They provide the skills training a student needs to do scientific research. And they also give the student the experience of creating their own experiments and testing ideas themselves. Usually, the labs you take in the lower division are all about building skills, while the labs you do in your third or fourth year of college it's the labs you do in your third or fourth year of college that involve applying those skills to developing your own experiments. But in GE labs like this one, most students aren't going to take more than 1 or 2 science lab courses in college. So if those labs follow the usual pattern, then the GE students wind up learning the skills without ever getting to apply them. So in this course, many of the labs have what is called an exploration experiment. In the exploration experiment, I give you some ideas for experiments you can do that apply the skills you learned in the first part of the lab. You can use one of my suggestions or come up with one of your own. However you do it, I expect you to do a full-on experiment and describe in detail what you did, what your data was, and what the results told you. When you look at the exploration experiment part of the lab instructions, it may look like just a small part of the lab. But that's because I'm leaving it up to you to design the experiment. You're the one who has to put together the instructions instead. So the exploration experiment is usually as much work as the whole rest of the lab. Now let me show you some of the features in some of our lab write-ups here. All right, so here's the modules page, and we look down. Let's go down to week 3 here, because this is as I said, was the first week where you'll get to have several choices, and as you can see, there's 5 different options I'm giving you for labs to work with in this week. So let's have a look at the first lab on the list here. So notice, first of all, that this lab has a video tutorial to start. Many of the labs have these tutorials, and they're designed to show you how to do some of the trickier parts of the labs. So go ahead and use them whenever you need help working on these. Next, notice the purpose section. That gives you a quick summary of what the lab is about. This will help you decide whether it's the lab you want to do that week. What will you need section lets you know if there are important materials, equipment, or time constraints you need to worry about in doing these labs. I tried to avoid asking you to have access to any specialized scientific equipment here, but I also know that not everyone has easy access to a printer or a smartphone. The preparation section lets you know which of the course online lectures this lab is tied to. It's a good idea to review that lecture since it will give you a better understanding of what we're doing in the lab. The background section summarizes some of the key ideas we'll be working on. You'll need to read this if you want to have a chance of understanding what we're doing in the lab. Generally, the actual lab instructions start after that. Remember that these are often divided into skill building and exploration experiment sections. I often give you room to put your answers on the lab write-up, but in most cases, if it's more convenient for you to put your answers in a separate file and submit that, that's fine too. And there's the exploration experiment section, and again, notice that this is looks like a short section, but there's a lot you need to do here. At the end of the lab, there's usually some discussion of what you need to turn in. Make sure you look over this and the rubric that comes after it. You need to turn in all the parts that you're asked for here so that you can get full credit. Note that I tend to regard what you submit as a first draft. If I think there is room for improvement, I'll let you know, and I'll usually give you detailed comments on the lab along with a breakdown on the grading rubric. And if the score is below a satisfactory level, I'll let you know and encourage you to turn in a revised version with your corrections in it. You do need to get the lab done to get to a satisfactory level for it to count, so making those revisions is important. So if you don't do well on one of the labs, don't give up on it. Look over the comments, make your revisions, and if anything isn't clear, go ahead and send me a message about it. I'm happy to respond to email or even get together on Zoom to go over it and make sure you know what needs to be done. The last thing I want to remind you of on the labs is that you need to give them enough time if you want to do a good job on them. If we were doing these on campus, we would spend about 3 hours each week just working on labs. So I usually expect that that's how long it will take you to do the online labs. If you're getting behind, go ahead and contact me, and we can talk about how to schedule things to get you back on track. That's it for the labs. Best of luck, and let me know if you have any questions on it.